Hey everyone, it's Blair here at Time Trades. Thanks for joining me this weekend. Okay, so let's update our forecast from last weekend where we had a very bullish bias based on the Time Trades forecast. And obviously it was not a very bullish week after Monday. So what happened and what can we do to detect these earlier? Well, I think it's important that we go back to our framework for decision making here. So let's pull that up. You'll notice price is always at the top in terms of importance, right? Because that's where we set our entries, how we establish our exits, set stops. Magic levels can be used to help identify price, as well as Heikin-Ashi bars. So this was one of those weeks where putting price at the top of your decision-making process would have really helped. After that, there's some additional context that can be gained from things like cheat code time periods, short-term waves and Gann waves. And then finally, the third most important item is the daily forecast. And these are the probabilities of moves up and down as well as pivots. Okay, now it's important to understand these daily forecasts are basically built using an association agent. It's built on the assumption that what happened last time will continue to happen again. And these are built using the amount of data that we have available to us, which is at the most 20 years. So there are going to be some limitations here in terms of these daily forecasts, because sometimes some longer term cycles may kick in where we don't have a pattern in the price history, right? So if it's a cycle that's longer than 20 years, then we won't have any price history for that. The daily forecast will not reflect that. So it's important to remind everyone, I think, of the uncertainty that's inherent here, which is why price is so important. And that is what will help to keep you consistently profitable. So if we go back to time trades here, let's take a look at the Qs. Now, over the last week or so, the forecast has changed and become much more neutral, but price is telling us that things are going down. And you can actually see that pretty clearly in the trading view. So if we switch over to trading view and take a look at the Qs, you can see how this rollover kind of evolved here. And this was Monday, April 4th. And I like the Heikin-Ashi bars because they do filter out some of the noise here. And you'll notice there's kind of two types of Heikin-Ashi bars. There's those with wicks above and below, like here and here on March 31st. I'm going to zoom in a bit more. And then there's Heikin-Ashi bars like this whole string of green here that have wicks only on one side. Okay, and this is basically where price ends up closing above the halfway point of the current bar. So when we get in a period like this is like a period of indecision where we see these double wicked Heikin-Ashi bars appear, like 3 out of the 4 Heikin-Ashi bars had both wicks, which indicate some level of indecision. And then after Tuesday, April 5th, then we clearly got a breakdown here. We lost this magic level. That happened early in the morning. And as soon as we lost that magic level, that's really when the tone of the market changed. So I'm starting to build a mental model of directional trading that is based on the last magic level cross. So up until here, the last magic level cross, we crossed 1, 2, 3, 4 magic levels. So obviously that's all bullish. Period of indecision, cross this magic level here to the downside. This is how I treat price action at certain levels with much more importance than price action at other levels. And the price action around these magic levels is really, really important. So based on all of this, and this is the PPO indicator down here, and you can see that rolling over with the histogram declining and ultimately a crossover on Friday. The momentum is building for further downside early next week. And it may stop here at 346 on the Qs. It may keep going to the next magic level. We don't know. So if we can make quick decisions and be nimble around these magic levels, that can certainly help us be consistently profitable. All right, so let's go back and take a look at the forecast for the Qs. And actually, before I do that, I want to make one more announcement here, just to remind everyone that the time trades forecasts are rebuilt every night. So after every trading day, we get a new data point in terms of price, and then we update the forecast. So this is why the forecasts change. And I want to make sure that no one is surprised by that. I do get the occasional emails from people asking about, why did the forecast change? And the point is that these future forecasts on the right-hand side of the chart are basically built using a machine learning model that associates price with time. So as price changes, as we get a new price bar in the historical data set, that adds more information and that can change the go forward forecast. All right. So with that being said, let's take a look at what we're seeing here on the Qs. It's actually, the forecast itself is actually quite neutral, but remember, this is like the third most important thing to look at. Price is definitely not neutral. Price is bearish. But the go forward forecast is showing some strength starting April 18th, which is a week from tomorrow. Reminder that United States markets are closed for Easter Friday, Good Friday. This is a shortened trading week. Thursday the 14th is the last trading day this week, and that's reflected here in the go forward forecast. So we've got a big pivot high, or sorry, not a pivot high, a forecast for an 81% probability of an up day on Monday the 18th, and that's going into some pivot highs as well. So that looks relatively positive, but my concern is what's going to happen between, this ugly Friday close and for the rest of the week. And that is where I think price may come down lower. I think it's very likely that we come down at least to this 346 magic level and possibly lower. So I am actually bearish over the weekend, anticipating that, because one of the things that I've found about these magic levels is they tend to act as centers of gravity for price. And it's if you look in the price history, it's actually pretty rare to see a reversal kind of in no man's land between magic levels. You can see some reversals over here, like in December 3rd and December 20th. But I would actually say that's not no man's land. That's almost exactly halfway between these two magic levels. And halfway between magic levels is also a very strong, it's a very likely spot to see a reversal. So we see reversals up here, very close to the magic level, a decline, a retest, and then a decline all the way down. Now, is this going to be the final low here on January 10th? Well, it comes back a little bit. And then it claims the next magic level down here at 361. And then it keeps going for 2 more magic levels. So this is what I mean when I say the price action around these magic levels is really important. And once we start seeing some downwards momentum, it's very, very common to see price go for at least the next magic level. And if there's a lot of momentum behind the movement, then it'll keep going to the next one. So we have to stay open-minded and nimble this week before we get to some of the more positive looking forecasts in the following week, starting April 18th. So that's my little bit of commentary there on the cues. Let's take a look at the spider, see if we can see anything slightly different here. It's very similar. We've got that forecast up day, a lower probability though, 28% on April 18th. Then that's going into a pivot high later in April. So there's a little bit less information here in the spider forecast than in the cues. Let's look at diamonds. Diamonds, there's even less information, but what information there is also aligned with the cues and the spiders. We see a move up, 17% probability on April 19th. So that's pretty close to alignment. And then we see some big pivot highs here, April 22nd and April 29th. So it looks like late April is likely to be a pivot point in the indexes, with time trades thinking it's going to be a pivot high. Okay, let's take a look at IWM. This one's always a little different from the others. So we've got a lot more information here to work with. We see a continuation of this down move here around the magic level at 199. And then next week, we see a bit of a recovery starting, coming into a pivot high around May 9th. So this one, again, is showing a little bit of weakness this week into April 14th. And then that's Friday. And then starting next week after the long weekend, we see a bit of positive movement up in the forecast, heading into a pivot high May 9th. Okay, so that's IWM. Let's take a look at bonds. And bonds, I think, are really driving the market right now. We can see this incredible meltdown here of the 7 to 10-year treasuries. That being said, there's a little cluster here of 1 standard deviation up days for this week, starting April 11th, which is Monday. So we've got about 4 days in a row of positive movement up. But then we've got some contradictory small probability of a 2 standard deviation down day on the 13th. I think the big wild card on bonds this week, of course, is going to be the inflation data that comes out. I believe it's Tuesday. And that's going to include all of the March data, which, of course, was 100% affected by the conflict in Ukraine. So I'm certainly personally expecting inflation to be worse month on month compared to the March release. So I expect there to be a reaction in the market to that, but that's not. It's what time trades is telling us here is that it's generally got a bullish forecast, but it's hard to reconcile that with all of the macro news that's going on right now. So the other thing to notice up here with IEF is pivot highs around April 25th, 27th. And that's right around a cluster of of down days. So we've got some pivots very close together. So certainly looks like a lot of volatility in bonds. So we've got a pivot high April 25th, pivot low April 29th. We've got a big cluster of down days around here. So I think this move down has been so significant and so sustained. It's probably due for a little relief bounce. It could happen after that news comes out with inflation, after a further probe down here. Okay, so that's IEF. Let's look at TLT. So this is 20-year treasuries. And TLT has a much more bearish forecast than the shorter term ones. We can see waves down, peaking April 13th, a little pivot high here, April 25th, and more moves down around that, and basically no forecast up move at all until after May 10th. So it looks like long-term bonds are forecast to continue to decline, implying long-term rates continue to go up. Okay, let's take a look at Apple here, and I want to address a question I got on Twitter. So when it comes to Apple actually had last week's forecast was pretty bullish, and I was trying to position for that and take advantage of that. Didn't happen. So on Friday, I flipped bearish on Apple, and this is where you got to be open-minded to price action that is different from what you may expect, and just go with the flow, as it will. The thing I see with Apple is we got a red bar here, even with a forecast update on April 8th. So the playing field's starting to tilt down on Apple. It's encountering a lot of headwinds, and these forecast updates disappear early next week. So Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, we've got near zero probability of an update on Apple. So that's one of the reasons why I flipped bearish on Friday, is because this supportive timing disappears for 3 days next week. One of the other reasons, and this is a little feature in time trades that I quite like. So under influencers, this is where you can learn a little bit more about what is behind these yellow and red bars. So I want to make sure that time trades is not a black box, that you can understand a little bit about what's going on underneath. So when we flip over to influencers for Apple and click on lunar transits, we can see here what are the lunar transits that actually have the most influence over up days and down days. So if we scroll down to the up days section of lunar transits, we can see the biggest influencer over lunar transits is the moon being in Libra. And that's followed closely by Aries, Gemini, and Cancer. The moon just entered Leo right now, so it's right about here, which is maybe slightly above average for up days. But if we scroll down to down days, moon in Leo actually has more of an influence over down days than up days. Down days are also heavily influenced by Capricorn. GC, if you're curious, stands for the galactic center. That's a spot right within Sagittarius and late Sagittarius. So that's where the center of the Milky Way is. But the moon entering Capricorn is the #1 influencer of down days, but Leo is also up there, surprisingly. I think this runs a little bit counter to some of the accepted wisdom out there. All of this information is baked into the probabilities of moves up and down. And this is one of the reasons why I also went bearish on Apple on Friday. Okay, so that's the influencers and specifically the lunar transits part of Apple. So we have a little bit of a contradictory forecast here because we've got moves up heading into a pivot low. Okay, So in general, when I see one standard deviation moves up that contradict a pivot low, I'm putting more weight on the pivot low forecast, okay? So that's just sort of based on accuracy of these probabilities. The pivot lows tend to have a higher accuracy than the one standard deviation up moves because they're more rare. All right, so that's Apple. Let's take a look at the rest of the major tech stocks, we can shift into Amazon. Let's see what Amazon is telling us here. Amazon actually has some more probabilities of down days this week. That looks bearish, but then there's a big up day in April 25th and a pivot high April 29th. So this gives some more alignment with our overall view of maybe some lower prices this week, and then a move up into late April. Let's look at Google. Google's showing a small pivot low on Monday, and then a big one standard deviation move up on Monday, April 18th. So if you want to take this long, it looks like maybe, you know, Thursday, Friday this week might be a good time to prepare for a long entry in Google. Let's take a look at Netflix. Netflix, kind of similar. We start to see some up probabilities on Monday heading into Tuesday the 19th. But again, my concern is what happens in the 4 trading days of this week. There's not much information in the time trades forecast here, but the price action recently, again, not bullish. Okay, let's take a look at Microsoft. All right, Microsoft, not much to talk about for this week, but then next week we start to see some probabilities of up moves as well as pivot highs, and a little bit of volatility with, you know, pivot high on the 18th, pivot low on the 25th, and then another pivot high on the 28th. And then we can start to see over the medium term an increase in probabilities of down days over the summer. Again, this is telling us that late April is going to be a critical time period. Facebook. Okay, Facebook actually looks pretty bullish after getting completely smoked here by like $100 from 320 down to under 200, but it's starting to make a bit of a comeback. It looks a little bit more interesting as a long starting, you know, Friday, maybe. So if you're interested in taking Facebook long, then watch it closely. We can turn on magic levels, maybe check to see if there's a check to see if it can pull back to one of these magic levels here around 207 or 214. And take advantage of this nice ramp up of 1 and 2 standard deviation probabilities into late April. Tesla. All right, Tesla is showing a ramp up into April 20th, so slightly different date than the others. Again, when you're trading something volatile as Tesla, pay very close attention to these magic levels. I was able to successfully trade Tesla just based on magic levels alone, the fact that it was taking out one after another, basically claiming a new magic level almost every day here in this run. So there's lots of opportunity here in a stock like this. It looks like it's backfilling this gap here down to about the 1,000 level. That may be a good opportunity to position for a run up into earnings on April 20th. There's a big probability here, 57% probability of a 1 standard deviation up day on April 20th. And if we look at the stats, 1 standard deviation up day measured against the bar 5 bars prior is 8%. So that's a pretty healthy move, especially if you're playing that with options. So you can do the math and figure out what 5 trading days prior to the 20th is. That would be right about here, I think, the 13th. So yeah, lots of bullish opportunity on Tesla if you manage your risk right. Okay, let's take a look at crypto BTC. Now, we've been calling for a crypto spring for a while. Hasn't really worked out that way yet. I thought it was going to, really kick off with this move up here. But we've seen a real pullback, and you can see how this has changed over the past week. I believe a week ago, there was virtually no forecast for anything on Bitcoin. But the latest price information has influenced the model, updated the model, and now we're seeing a forecast for a bit more of a pull down here. And what we may be seeing is a potential retest of this magic level here at 39.6. This level has been key. It's having some challenges trying to separate from that. I really thought that this ramp up here was the separation because it claimed 1, 2, 3 magic levels above 39.6, had a neutral forecast going forward, but that didn't come to be. It slipped below this magic level here at 44.6. That was our first clue that something was wrong. And now it's claimed one more on the downside at 42.6. So we've got a little nub of a pivot low here on April 16th, and that's a 12% probability of a pivot low. That looks like an opportunity to maybe reconsider some longs at this point. We'll see what price is around then, and see if this and this crypto bullish forecast that we thought we were seeing, a couple months ago will come to pass in Bitcoin. All right, let's take a look at Ethereum. The Ethereum forecast, pretty quiet. And again, you can see the importance of the magic levels here. Price boosts up, slams into the white magic level at 35.80, bounces back. Looks like this one here at 31.60 is providing support. But we're not seeing a lot of support here from the forecast, either up or down. There's a little forecast for an update here, April 24th, and then a better cluster in May. Overall, still think the general direction for crypto is up. Looking ahead into the future, we see a big pivot high here in July. Let's take a look at Digibyte. We looked at this last week. Okay, so with Digibyte, it's pretty much a mixed forecast here. We've got some pivot highs, we've got some moves up, and again, there really isn't a lot to go on here in terms of the timing forecast. This one is probably a little bit better traded just with price alone. Until we can get to a spot where the forecast is a little bit more confident, like I'm looking over here at this 59% move up in late April. Maybe there's a good timing opportunity to enter. You see how these small probability 1 standard deviation down moves come just before this cluster of up moves. Same thing here, small probability, 16% probability of a down move comes right before this cluster of up moves. There might be some opportunity there to play that. Maybe try putting some orders in, like 1 or 2 magic levels below price to see if you can get a fill on a liquidity break or something like that. Okay, so that's Digibyte. Let's take a look at Luna. Luna's kind of been the trendy coin lately with this giant pop up from 80 to 120, had a big correction here as it lost 1, 2, 3, 4 magic levels. We've got a pivot low April 10th, followed by a cluster of up days. And we've got a nice big green bar here for yesterday coming up over that important magic level at 95. So there's a little bit more bullishness in the forecast coming up for Luna here. So again, manage the risk, but it looks like up is the direction that you want to trade Luna. Okay, and we'll wrap things up with a review of the 3 Indian stocks that we're tracking. TATACONSUM a week ago was in the 760 range. And so it was down here, and we had a cluster of 1 standard deviation up days, and it did not disappoint, pushing all the way up to the next magic level here and slightly beyond. It's roughly 820 right now. There's more clusters of up days coming, and it looks like this bull run isn't going to finish until early May. So TATACONSUM continues to be a good long hold. Adani Enterprises. So let's take a look at this one. Similar story, maybe a little bit less dramatic than Tata. It was, where was it? At last week's video. It was down here, right around 2016, and pushed up to this next magic level here at 2128. So if we resize the screen a little bit, you can see it. There's also a wick all the way up to the white magic level here at 2207, which is really cool. And it just kind of goes to show how price really doesn't like to be in between these magic levels, right? So Friday, April 1st, it closed right in between, and then it continued to trend up. They act as basically centers of gravity at attracting price all the way up. Often I've seen it's difficult for price to get through a white magic level on the first try. Often it'll behave just like this, bounce off it, come back for a retest, or maybe consolidate just underneath that white magic level before pushing through. But from the timing forecast, there's lots of supportive tailwind here for Adani Enterprises to continue making higher highs. Okay, next up, let's take a look at InfoEdge. And InfoEdge still has this pivot low on April 12th, but that's not stopping it from going up. So it looks like it was a very good week for bulls on the Indian markets. But I still think that this would be a better entry after on Tuesday, possibly, because these pivot lows, they tend to act as magnets to pull price down and then reject price afterwards. So Tuesday there could be some more volatility on this name, and then we can see there's a cluster of 1 standard deviation up days, not quite as strong as the others, but definitely still a bullish play here, and it's making higher highs and higher lows. So it's checking all the technical boxes as well. All right, so that's it for this week. I wish you luck in trading this week. Good trading and trade safe, and we will talk again next week. Bye now.